Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to run an article titled Marriage Disproportionately Benefits Men. And guys, this article is obviously written by a woman, and she is trying to make the case that marriage is the best possible deal for men, but not for women. Now guys, if you need to take a moment to pause the video and stop and laugh out loud for a couple minutes to get it out of your system, go right ahead, and then we'll continue on. But yes, and a big shout out to Morgan for sending me this article. This is quite funny here. But yes, guys, this whole article is this woman, she's going through this whole thing about how marriage benefits guys. And it does not benefit women in any way, shape, or form. Now, I don't know where this lady has been living her life, but in no way, shape, or form is it a better deal for guys. And I'm sure every single guy watching this that is presently married, but probably not too happy, or that's been married and been divorced and gone through that, knows darn well what she's trying to sell here is as big as a bunch of BS any of you guys have ever heard, including myself. And I gotta say this, guys, people try to make the argument all the time where they'll say that, oh, it benefits because, the tax benefits. You get married and then you can file jointly, and by and large, you should benefit from that. Or you can benefit by being on each other's insurance plans. Or you can benefit by saving money because, you'll share certain household expenses as opposed to living each on your own, like electric and obviously internet and cable, things like that. And of course, you're both living together and paying the bills, all that. But we all know darn well that the second, even though there are savings, we know darn well that money is going to go right out the door, as most women are usually pretty bad with money. They're big spenders. Not all. There are some women that are good with money and they save, but by and large, most women tend to spend way more than your typical guy does. That's why, those big houses in the suburbs, the McMansions that were very big about a decade and a half ago, and now to some extent, who do you think wants those? Who do you think really wants to compete with the Joneses? The wives, right? And that's just scratching the surface. Meanwhile, guys generally don't need as much to be happy. This is why so many guys, after they get a divorce and they're on their own, they can rebuild pretty quickly because guys can live cheap. Okay, they don't need a whole lot to be happy, but they do need their freedom. And then amongst many other things here, guys. And then, of course, there's the whole fact being married and just the fact that often the second they say I do, women tend to let themselves go. You can get the bait and switch wife, and you're like, who the hell is this person I just married? But in fairness, guys can do that too. Guys can let themselves go physically. A lot of guys that used to work out tend to let themselves go. A lot of guys that used to take their lady out beforehand stop taking her out, which leads to her being kind of bitchy and complaining and letting herself go. It's a never-ending vicious cycle. What came first, the chicken or the egg? But the point is, the idea that it disproportionately benefits men as opposed to women, you got to be out of your damn mind. But anyhow, I'm going to read her article here. You guys will get a good laugh at this, and I'm going to pick it apart along the way. So it starts off, and this is her first, listen to the first paragraph here. It says it all. It says, marriage benefits men more than it does women. Married men are happier and healthier than their unmarried counterparts. Their careers also benefit, and married men are more likely than unmarried men to be in the top 1% of earners. You gotta be kidding me. Married men are happier and healthier than their unmarried counterparts. In other words, your typical married guy is happier than your typical single guy. Again, what universe has she been living on for her whole life here? Single guys that realize the value of being single and how great it is, they got it made. They are healthier. They are happier because they have to deal with all the bullshit, right? But there are a lot of guys that are single that they haven't been around the block long enough to realize how much of a great thing they have being single. And about the part here that unmarried men tend to be the top percentage of earners, I haven't researched that statistic, but let's just say for argument she's accurate in that. Well, they may be a top 1% of earners or higher earners, but at the end of the day, where does all that money go? Right, we know where it goes. Her spending it. So, come on here. It goes on. On the other hand, women's health doesn't improve significantly with marriage. In fact, women's health is much more tied to the quality of the marriage. While even bad marriages seem to benefit men, women's health suffers a bigger impact than men's if the marriage is bad. Trust me, the guys' health aren't that great either. Believe me. To top it all off, nearly 70% of all divorces in the U.S. are initiated by women. So what's going on here? Oh, and I forgot to mention in the beginning of the in the intro, guys, as you quickly find out, this woman is, wait for it, divorced. And in my opinion, a little bitter. Probably the divorce didn't go the way she wanted, so she's a little PO'd and wants to stick it to guys and say how much we benefit from marriage. Again, anybody who's been married and been through the divorce process and been hammered in it, in terms of everything financially and also arrangements with the kids, know darn well who benefits, not just from the divorce, but also in the marriage as well. She says, well, I'd be the first to remind anyone that correlation doesn't imply causation. As someone who's deeply interested in studying human relationships, and as a woman who's been married and asked for a divorce, I can't help but speculate. Well, there you go. She's in the 70% that ask for divorces. Why is it that popular culture depicts women as marriage-minded, but at the same time, women seem to be the ones who are quitting marriages in droves? What is it about marriage that disappoints women so deeply? Well, because women are so picky, because in today's world, thanks to the feminist movement and campaign slogans for products like "You're Worth It," social media and dating apps promoting women getting attention all the time, they figure, hey, I can get something better. I can do better than what I'm doing, even though, I'm on the wrong side of 30, and I'm not as good looking as I once was. I can get any guy I want because look at all the attention I'm getting on social media, and I deserve better. That's why. And of course, no fault divorce laws in many states that easily a woman can walk away. Guy does everything right, and still she can walk away with ease. And she could do all these things, and you've seen plenty in the articles I've gone over, or the stories I've gone over, and walk away and have it made. They got it easy, 70%. And guys don't initiate divorces as much because they know they're going to get hammered in the divorce process. He says there's less tolerance for hostility. Many years ago, my grandmother attended a 70-year wedding anniversary party. The couple were in their 90s. They smiled as they cut the cake together and took pictures with their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Then she says that her grandmother said that he used to hurt her every single day. But there they were, celebrating 70 years as husband and wife. So she's trying to pretty much say that because she went to this thing with her grandma, a 70th wedding anniversary, and they were celebrating, but meanwhile grandma says, yeah, well, you know what he used to really do behind the scenes. She's kind of twisting this to make out to be that's was the situation across the board before. And I'm not saying there weren't a lot of situations like that, and in my opinion, nobody should be getting physical harm or mental or psychological in any kind of relationship or marriage at all, both sides. But to make it out to be that's how things always were with every couple, that's bullshit. She says, couples like the one my grandmother witnessed are becoming increasingly rarer, thankfully. Women used to endure a lot in the past, physical and emotional, because divorce was either not an option, legally speaking, or was too taboo to even contemplate. Marriage was final, and if being treated like that was what being married was, then that's what married life was like. End of story. Well, when she talks about the taboo thing, my grandma, her first marriage, and my grandma was, she was tough. She was very cool, but she was tough, didn't tolerate any shit. But she had a lot of hardships. She grew up, when the hell was she born? I think 1910. So as you can imagine, she went through the whole Spanish flu, World War I, World War II, Great Depression. That hardened people. And the first dude she married, that was the father of my uncle, he definitely wasn't the best guy, to put it mildly, and she divorced him, which, again, as she mentioned, was taboo, but she had the strength to do it, okay, because it wasn't going well. And the next dude she married, who was my grandfather, was a great guy. And he wasn't like the nice guy, but he was just a great guy. And he took in my uncle and was a great father to him and all that, and it was awesome. So divorce did happen. It could happen in bad situations. It may not have been popular, but you got to do what you got to do. Anyhow, there you go, a little family history on my part. Now women are more educated to identify even the more subtle forms of emotional and psychological problems. And more empowered, there's that buzzword, to get out of those kinds of bad marriages sooner rather than later. Empowered to get out of those marriages. Translation, no-fault divorces. Well, look what's come about that. Again, guys do everything right, women can get away with anything, and walk away and make out like a bandit. So it wasn't great where people were trapped in bad situations. I agree with bad situations, bad marriages, but now this ease to get out and the guy gets royally screwed over, that's not cool either. Now women have a much shorter tolerance for bad behavior their grandmothers were expected to overlook in the past. Doris Schwartz, a divorce mediator and coach, says today's modern woman is more unlikely to put up with infidelity. Once the honeymoon period is over, some men drastically change their behavior from romantic to controlling and emotionally treating her badly. I can't say the word that they said because YouTube doesn't like that too much. Unfortunately, this happens in many marriages and women don't want to take it anymore. Oh, so is she trying to say that she's saying that guys will bait and switch husband? The guy's going to change after they say I do, but the woman doesn't? Bullshit. How many times do you hear about the bait and switch wife? Becomes a totally different person once you guys say I do, walk down that aisle. Come on here. Now, I'm not saying guys don't let themselves go and change after they get married. It does happen. And I call guys out on that all the time. Guys that used to exercise and take care of themselves, let themselves go, sitting their butts all week and watching sport and getting takeout and drinking beer all the time. There's room for that. But by and large, if you're going to do relationships, if you're going to be married and you want it to actually go well like it was beforehand, you got to take her out, guys. End of story. You got to still romance her a little bit and take care of your own bodies, not let yourself go and gain 30 pounds over the course of a few years. But to act like it's just guys who do that, that's a bunch of nonsense. She says, the good news is women don't have to take it anymore. Says, it's unfair to ask, bad relationships aside, do women have too high expectations of marriage? Some people seem to think so. Yes, women have way too high expectations. They're so damn picky. That's why so many women now are single but want to be married, want to have families, and they complain that there's no good men, or where are all the good men gone, or something like that. And they're too picky. She says, in her 2010 book, Marry Him, The Case for Settling for Mr. Good Enough, Lori Gottlieb interviews several married women, as well as psychologists, matchmakers, and relationship experts in an attempt to understand if there's really no good men out there anymore, or if women are just too picky. Guess what? Women are just too picky. There are plenty of good guys out there. I'm not saying, and there's the definition of good. What is the good men? Well, we know that. 6 feet tall, 6-pack, 6-figure income, 6 inches plus down south, advanced degrees, speaks multiple languages, cultured, on and on and on. Those are the good men. And if you're not any of those, well, then you're just no good. And these are the average women that want these. You have your average women that think they're entitled to a top percentage guy when mathematically that's impossible, and yet they complain about, where are all the good men? There are no good men, and blame guys for the fact that they're alone. In defense of the picky woman argument, of course she's going to defend this, one advice stands out. Single women expect too much of marriage. A few twice married women interviewed from the book sound the alarm. While they don't necessarily regret asking for a divorce from their first husbands, getting married for a second time required a dose of humility and made them recognize, in retrospect, now listen to this, it made them realize that in retrospect, their first husbands weren't really that bad. They admit they probably could have stayed married had they realized that at the time. So these first marriages, the wives ended because the guy wasn't what they felt they deserved, and then after being single for a while, realizing, guess what, you're not as desirable as you once were, they realized maybe their husbands weren't that bad after all, and they probably could have stayed married if they realized at the time. Meanwhile, the husband, if hopefully he's moved on and he's doing well for himself, better than he was with her, and she can see that, and see that he's happy, and she made the dumbass mistake. The men these women married next aren't perfect either. According to their own testimony, they had to learn to tolerate imperfection in order to stay married the second time around. The wives had to tolerate imperfection, so they're perfect. Do you see the level of delusion? Here we go in today's world. In decades past, a good marriage is one in which both spouses consistently respected each other, had somewhat of an active you-know-what life, hit milestones together like bought a house, had children, and retired, and didn't cause each other serious problems and harm. Now, a good marriage is expected to provide emotional support, intellectual stimulation, companionship, best friend level camaraderie, an endless source of laughter and joy, and exciting, never boring, you-know-what life. In what world is this actually going to happen? And she's making the point that the expectations now are ridiculous and through the roof. Okay, this is one thing she's saying that I agree with, or referring to that I agree with. But right there it shows how women don't know what the hell they want and understand attraction. Because you're not going to be with a guy that's like your best friend and you're going to have an amazing, mind-blowing, you know what life. Because those type of guys, the best friend scenario with the woman and the guy best friends, there's no mystery there. Okay, it's just not the same. But a lot of women don't get that. She goes on, and yes, most of those expectations do come from women. All those expectations come from women. What is she talking about? The same women who think a man who truly loves them will read their minds and know exactly what to do and what to say in every situation as if life were no more than a script. Newsflash, ladies, for the women that watch my channel or occasionally stumble upon it, men are not mind readers, okay? We're not psychic. That is why you need to explain things to us and communicate in a healthy adult manner and not get mad when we can't read your damn minds. How many of you guys have been in girlfriends or wives or fiancés that would get mad and throw little 6-year-old temper tantrums because you can't read their minds, right? It's happened to me. It's like, I'm not a mind reader. But yet they never seem to get it. It's not a surprise that many women get married only to discover their spouse can't be their best friend, lover, therapist, cheerleader, and household co-manager all at once. Gee, you think? Even the best men are only human, and sadly some women discover this truth when it is already too late. Now under the subject of emotional labor and gender roles, while glorying Gottlieb's book is a cautionary tale against unreasonable female expectations. Sometimes it is women's very realistic expectations not being met that shatters all hope for a good marriage. Now here we go. Now we're going to get into the part about household chores and doing the dishes and cleaning and all that crap. She says, yet some of women's expectations are impossible to meet, but at the same time, too many men consistently fail to step up to the mark at even the most basic level. Define stepping up to the mark. What? He didn't vacuum the house in a way that you're happy with? He didn't flush the toilet fast enough? He left the cap off the toothpaste? He didn't take out the garbage as fast as you wanted? Is that what you're talking about here? How many of you guys have dealt with drama like that with your living girlfriends? Despite the majority of households in the U.S. relying on two incomes, men and women still tackle household chores disproportionately. Here's a statistic that will shock absolutely no one. On average, men work longer hours outside the home, yet even in families where the women worked equivalent or longer hours and earned higher salaries, they still took on more of the household responsibilities. Well, that is the traditional role as women take. The traditional role that women have done, going back a very long time, and still do. Okay? And also, like I said before, just because a guy isn't jumping to it like that to take out the trash or clean or any of that crap doesn't mean that it's disproportionate. Maybe he's going to do it in his own time. Maybe in his view, the house is clean enough. I mean, I've never met a guy that was able to clean his house in the way that his wife wanted it to be. Her expectations were up here and his were here. Simple solution. The guy says, okay, I will do my part to help out to this point. Anything beyond that in terms of like psychotic cleanliness, you can finish off. But don't bitch at me, because this house is not going to be as clean as the White House or Buckingham Palace or any other place that's considered to be, you'd have top quality cleanliness. According to with a 2019 report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, men with full-time employment work on average 8.3 hours compared with 7.7 hours for women. I'm guessing that's a day. It's fair to ask, do women take on more of the household because they work on average fewer hours, or do they work fewer hours because they know if they don't get home in time to cook dinner and do the laundry, no one else will? Newsflash, in today's world, guys can cook. Guys can cook and do laundry and do all that stuff, but we do it in our own timely manner. Okay? End of story. Do women work fewer hours because it's easier to do so than ask for the help of the husband, who will mostly ignore her and call her a nag? See, again, she's bitter, and she's trying to make it out that all guys are this way. A lot of guys I know that are married, they do help out. They really do. They like to cook. They want to live in a clean place. But again, they do it on their schedule, in their time frame, on their terms. And a lot of times it's not good enough for some of these pain in the ass nagging wives. And by the way, back to the subject of nagging, Women live to nag. They love to nag. They're always going to nag. Even if everything is right, there'll be something else to nag about. That way it keeps things interesting. There's a little drama, and you all know it. She continues, here's a truly shocking statistic. In a 2019 study published in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, which included over 6,000 American heterosexual couples over 15 years, many men experience psychological distress if their wives made more than 40% of the household income in a marriage. Yes, it's 2020 and men still psychological distress over their wives taking home a decent paycheck. Now, does she mean the wives taking home a decent paycheck, or does she mean women making more than their guy? Now, if the woman's making more than their guy, a lot of guys are going to start to have issue with that, because oftentimes it's been found that women's attitudes change towards the guy when they start making more money. Okay, they start seeing him as less, or he's not working hard enough to better himself. No joke. And I've done a lot of stories about this where the woman starts making more money with a promotion, and she all of a sudden wants to basically run the relationship at that point, because she's taking more of the role as the man, as the provider, and sometimes in some cases they want the guy to actually stay home with the kids and clean and do all that bullshit. That emasculates the man. It puts him in his feminine. She's in her masculine, and it screws up the whole dynamic with them. Sooner or later there's resentment going on, arguments, bad vibes, and sometimes affairs happen, cheating and divorce. Does that mean it's always going to go down that path? No, but it doesn't always work out too well. But it's one thing if she's making more and is the breadwinner, or she's just doing well in general. But at the end of the day, guys want to do the man's role, which is be the one to provide, okay? And if he feels like she's providing for him, it's going to throw off the whole balance. Again, a lot of people aren't going to like what I'm saying. A lot of people won't like my opinions on this, but I speak the ugly truth quite often. And if people don't like it, hey, find another channel. She says, if marriage represents an environment where support for a woman to pursue her career goals is low, where she has to take on a disproportionate amount of housework and childcare despite having a partner, on paper, to share those responsibilities with, and where a resistant husband makes addressing those issues in a productive way a waking nightmare, it's not really a surprise that women are calling it quits. Well, I do think that a guy should help out, but if he's helping out and being sincerely trying to do his part to help out because he's a good guy and it still isn't good enough for her, that's on her. It says here, relationships are more flexible now and divorce is more accepted. She says, you know what? S word. No longer needs to be sanctioned by marriage. There's a myriad of socially acceptable relationship arrangements, from friends with benefits to polyamory and beyond. Single women over 30 are no longer called spinsters, and being a divorced woman isn't as taboo as it once was. All things considered, incentive for women to remain in a bad marriage is simply too low to matter. Well, at the end of the day, pretty much most women want to eventually walk down that aisle once, have their magical day in the dress so they can say they got some guy to want to marry them. Because it's not hard for your average woman that is remotely good looking to get guys to hook up with them. That's not hard, okay? Guys are pigs. It is what it is. If she's remotely good looking, and if she's taken a shower in the last day or so, she can pretty much hook up with most guys. But to get a guy to marry her, that's a different ballgame. Once a woman is in an unhappy marriage, realizes she might just as well go do it by herself, nothing will convince her to stay. And it's so common for women to just throw in the towel, and they got friends that obviously have thrown in the towel too, they'll do it. Marriage just seems less important these days. Well, now she's saying something I agree with. This isn't a case against marriage, but it's hard to go through all the arguments and life experience. As I said, I'm divorced myself, ding, 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 and not come out feeling like marriage simply isn't as important as it once was. I still believe in marriage, though. My parents have been happily married for over 30 years, and I would like to one day find the same for myself, although these days it's become somewhat less of a priority. Marriage now feels like something that would be nice to have, that I'm no rush to obtain and could absolutely do without. Well, there is no rush, and don't rush, because don't rush some guy who's clueless into something that will but certainly not benefit for him, as she's pointing out here that marriage just doesn't seem that important these days. You don't need to be married, but a lot of these women have in their heads that they're failures if they don't. Save some guy a lot of misery and don't get married, lady. It says, I suppose this is how most women out there feel, initiating 70% of the divorces, like they simply do without. In the end, men benefit more from marriage. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. She's still sticking to this, but are more resistant to enter it, in part due to social expectations. Men still see getting married as giving up their freedom in exchange of questionable, although scientifically proven gains. What gains? What are you talking about? I went through this whole thing here. The gains is being free. And freedom is being single, doing well for yourself, and living your life in your own way, without any drama, without any bullshit, anything like that. Guys, you can do relationships. If you like relationships, have a great time. But it doesn't mean you have to get hitched to make it better, because usually it makes it worse. In fact, almost always it makes it worse. Women, on the other hand, despite being socialized to want marriage from a young age, are the first to quit when they realize marriage is a lot more stifling and lonely than they ever thought it'd be. Having been there myself, I don't blame them. She's bitter. Yeah, my butt. The marriage is a better deal for guys, and they're healthier and happier and blah, blah. How many of you guys, I want you guys to comment. How many of you guys have been married and you felt healthier and happier in that situation as opposed to when you were single? Or how you're feeling now once you've been divorced? And let me know how that divorce process went to benefit you, how she's talking about here. What a load of crap. But anyway, guys, I want to share this article. I think you'll find this entertaining, this delusion here. But she's mad. She's bitter. I'd like to know how recently divorced she is. That'll certainly shed some light on some of these views. But anyhow, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.